Welcome to Passion, a show all about love, sex, and relationships. I'm Dr. Laurie Bettito. Tonight, a regular monthly feature that we call Dating Dilemmas. We're going to talk about the Cassanova Complex as well as safer sex in the older generation, those of you 60 plus back into the dating game. And tonight I'm joined, as usual, for our Dating Dilemma feature, Frank Kermit, who is a dating coach, seduction and dating coach. We'll find out about that a little bit later as well. He's of franktalks.com. He's the author of several books. If you are single and you have questions about dating, about dating players, which is really something we're going to talk about as well, about safe sex, about using protection, about dating in older generation, meeting people, how to be successful, etc. Tonight's the night. 514-790-0991. You can also text your message at 514-800. Frank, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Dr. Laurie. It's great to be back.
So, okay, we're talking about tonight something very important, which is older, well, not just older women, but older individuals who are back into the dating game. I don't know what the figures are for how many people are single later in life, but I know there's an awful lot of either through divorce, through widowhood. I have met many women in their 60s plus who are questioning, how do I go about doing this dating thing? They're doing the online dating thing, which I find very interesting, but they're out of the loop. You know, maybe it's been 40 years since they were on the dating scene, and 40 years ago, I'm not sure how much safe sex they had to think about. And just trying to get that message out, I think, is really important because the rate of STIs is climbing in the 50 plus.
That's right. Seniors are having sex, senior sexcapades. They're having a wonderful time. They're having very satisfying sex lives, but they're bringing in some old attitudes which just don't apply anymore.
Okay, let's talk about what some of these attitudes are, because I think they interfere with the safer sex practices.
Exactly, because the majority of seniors don't use condoms. The first attitude is that, well, if they can't get pregnant, they don't really need condoms. And condoms protect more than just unwanted pregnancies.
Right, so that's a thinking that I can't get pregnant, therefore what the hell do I need to protect myself? But if you look at the statistics, that's the scary part is, if you know, there was a study done, women ages 58 to 93 who were dating and sexually active, 60% hadn't used a condom. So more than half will engage in sexual activity and not protect themselves.
That's right. I remember during my, my player days and my fun days, whenever I dated a woman who was past menopause, condom use really was not an issue. It was not something that they ever brought up. I would be the one to bring it up and say, maybe I should use a condom. And the general response would be, oh, you don't really need to do that. Because the idea really, their main focus, can I get pregnant? If I can't get pregnant, it's a non-issue. Whenever we brought up the topic of sexually transmitted diseases, and this seems to be a general belief amongst older people, sexually transmitted disease, that's something that soldiers get when they come back from war.
Is that ever old?
Because they were with the prostitutes over on the other side of the ocean. We're not in that, we're not in that group of people who are at risk.
I don't know. Do you really? So sometimes I find it hard to believe that those misconceptions are still out there, especially with the exposure we have today of talking about sexuality more openly and, being able to, they've got to hear things, read things in the paper. There's articles about what's happening in, with AIDS, for example. 10% of all new AIDS cases in 50 plus adults.
And that's
50 and older plus adults. So 10%, we didn't see that a whole long time ago. So why, you got to ask, why are you not protecting yourself? Why is this not an issue? Why don't you know about AIDS? Why don't you know about other things that you can catch?
Well, think about it. When they were sexually active in their youth before they got married or into long-term relationships, what did they know about AIDS at that time?
They just knew about the clap.
Exactly.
That was the thing. You don't want to get the clap.
And when AIDS came up, what was the one label it got? Well, that's the gay disease.
Right.
So if you're straight, you're not at risk. And don't forget, it's very comforting to believe that you are not at risk. You see people now, even young people today, sometimes they just don't have the cognitive understanding that, look, if you have sex, you're putting yourself at risk.
Right.
And you can justify it all you want. Well, you know, didn't you do a lecture on teenage sexuality where some of the teenagers were saying things like, well, I know I can't get pregnant because I've had unprotected sex for X number of months now and I haven't gotten pregnant yet.
Right. Or I know I can't get pregnant the first on the first time, so I don't really need to protect myself.
Exactly. So people will tell themselves whatever they need to tell themselves to feel safe.
I just wonder, it's interesting that if we look at the reasoning behind, I think it's a little different because the teen lack of condom use, they use it more than older people, but which is surprising. I mean, the older 50-plus crowd. But the reasons for them not using condoms has usually to do with this cognitive underdevelopment at that point, that because they think they're invincible, it won't happen to them, they don't think through the consequences. But when you're older, you do think about consequences, or you should think about consequences. So I'm not sure that it's that same feeling of not, being invincible at that point.
Maybe there's also, and none of the studies seem to have covered this, there might be an issue that maybe they're not fully cognitively aware. And maybe it's not just an issue of denial. They just aren't thinking through
I think it's
this.
education. I think more than the cognitive, because I think they're perfectly cognitively developed, but I think they're lacking the education. And I think we need to do more to educate older individuals about safe sex instead of always talking about safe sex as a teen thing and drumming the message to teens rather than focusing on a population that right now is at higher risk than probably teens are.
That's exactly
for sexually
right.
transmitted diseases.
And this is one of the paradoxes, because in all the studies that have been done that I've had the opportunity to read, there is a paradox going on. Older people tend to feel that their doctors should be the ones to bring up any sort of issue with sex. However, most doctors, when they're with an older person, aren't going to bring up the issue of sex.
Right. They're not going to say, so how's your sex life? It doesn't. Some doctors do, I have to say. Some doctors really do that as their regular screening stuff, but a lot don't. You're listening to Dating Dilemmas tonight. We're talking about safer sex in the older generation. We're just wondering if you've ever been with someone, if you're 60 plus or 50 plus, who refused to wear a condom or didn't wear or didn't ask you to wear a condom. Would like to know your thoughts on that at 514-790-0991. You're listening to Passion on CJAD 800.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the rules for the first 10 times you have sex with a new lover. How do you make your sex life with a new lover unique? How do you give her experiences that she will remember for years to come? What are the rules for the first 10 times you have sex with a new lover? How do you make up for lack of sexual experience or skilled expertise? How do you make sure she is still thinking of you, even when other guys are hitting on her? Or is she on a date with someone else? This program has those answers and more, including an emotional needs analysis of these sexual experiences you are going to enjoy with your new lover. The rules for the first 10 times you have sex with a new lover. Buy this program now at franktalks.com.
We now have more and more single people in their 50s and older. However, single women, 58 plus, only about 40% used a condom. That's 60% who had not used a condom when they had sex. And you should know that there are growing numbers of older adults who are being diagnosed every day with sexually transmitted infections. In fact, 10% of all new AIDS cases or HIV cases are adults aged 50 and older. And these are figures from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Now, that's serious business, which points to the fact that we need sex education for the older crowd, not just for the younger crowd. So let's talk about why older women, and maybe their partners, it's not just the older women. We've been saying that older women think, well, they can't get pregnant, so it's okay. They won't insist upon it. They're also less likely to carry them in their purse. because there's that whole thing, well, I don't want anybody to think I'm a slut or I'm promiscuous or what have you. Those are old good girl, bad girl feelings might still be there from the early years. What about men? Why wouldn't they want to use condoms?
Well, for some men who are older, they experience erectile dysfunction. And adding the putting on of a condom into that just makes the whole experience a lot less pleasant. Sometimes an older man will finally get that erection, but the process of trying to put the condom on,
Right.
especially if his hands are shaking or it could be a number of other things, by the time that happens, he may lose the erection. And it's just not a pleasant experience.
Right. And older women also suffer from vaginal dryness. So if they don't lubricate the condom and if they're not using lubricants, then they're going to find that uncomfortable. But there are other solutions. That's the thing. For the guy with erectile dysfunction, there's pills. For the woman with vaginal dryness, there's hormonal creams and over-the-counter lubricants that can be used. And that should absolutely be used every time, as long as they're water-based. If you're got to use the condom and the water-based. So what do we tell people?
We got to remind them that if you're going to be sexually active, regardless of your age,
Right.
you're putting yourself at risk. And it's great to tell people that they should find out about their partner's sexual history, provided that the partner is going to be honest. Some people are very secretive about it. They don't want to share that information. It's nobody's business who I was with in the past.
Right.
And so you have to respect a certain level of privacy.
But then go get tested. They
Yes.
also have to know that you can get tested, you can both be tested, and then if you want to have a monogamous relationship.
But you got to remember, for an older generation, even going to get tested has a level of stigma to it.
Right.
Any public knowledge about their personal private sex life has this entire stigma associated with it. It's not like today where you have young people being encouraged. No, you need to go get tested. You should be proud that you're going to go get tested. It shows that you're a
Right.
responsible adult.
Right.
Try and explain that to someone who grew up in an era where just the mention of sex was so taboo.
Right.
And now trying to tell them, well, okay, that worked for you 40 years ago, but now it's different, and now you can be free about it.
Right. Well, part of it is, I guess, in the past, you didn't have so many older people being so sexually active. So something has shifted. But it hasn't, our society has shifted in that respect, but it hasn't, the condom use or the safer sex practices haven't quite reached, the same level. I guess it didn't catch up.
Well, you're looking at more expressive attitudes towards sex. I mean, it's really relevant in the society around them. They're constantly exposed to sex, so it's not this taboo, secretive thing anymore, although their own personal lives are still secretive and taboo. You have a number of older people who are in better health now than, let's say, 2 or 3 generations
Sure.
ago. You have internet dating. You have older people who are getting accustomed to working with a computer. They're going to dating sites, and
There's plenty on people, senior dating or 50-plus dating, and there are hundreds and hundreds of such sites. So it's obviously much more popular.
So at one time, the only way that you could end up old and alone is if you were widowed. And it was very frowned upon if the widow or the widower would go off and marry someone else or date someone else. That's not the case anymore.
No.
So not only do you have the widows out there, but you also have a lot of people who are separated, divorced, who are old and alone, but not because their life partner has passed away. So they're looking for companionship. They want to find connection. They want to be happy.
Right. And the reality is that older people want an active sex life. The majority, vast majority believe it's important, want it. They don't lose their sexual interest as they get older. That's the reality. You're listening to Dating Dilemmas with my co-host for the evening, Frank Kermit from franktalks.com. If you have thoughts, questions about safer sex in the older generation, love to hear some of your thoughts at 514-790-0991.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the rules for the first 10 times you have sex with a new lover. How do you make your sex life with a new lover unique? How do you give her experiences that she will remember for years to come? What are the rules for the first 10 times you have sex with a new lover? How do you make up for lack of sexual experience or skilled expertise? How do you make sure she is still thinking of you, even when other guys are hitting on her? Or is she on a date with someone else? This program has those answers and more, including including an emotional needs analysis of these sexual experiences you are going to enjoy with your new lover. The rules for the first 10 times you have sex with a new lover. Buy this program now at franktalks.com.
Dating dilemmas tonight on Passion. We are talking about dating in your older years and how come so many people are not thinking about safe sex and thinking about the use of condoms. I don't know. Linda joins us on Passion. Hi, Linda.
Hi, Dr. Laurie. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Pretty good.
Good. What's going on?
Well, I'm 60 years old.
Yeah.
In my youth, I was very sexually active.
Mm-hmm.
Then I got married. And I've been divorced for the past 5 years.
Okay.
And I'm really not interested in sex at all. Honestly, the marriage was lousy. And in the past 5 years, I've not had any. And I met a guy like 4 months ago. He's 65.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all he wants.
Well, he should be interested in sex. I
Well,
mean, it's not good if that's all he wants. I would hope that he wants a connection and a real relationship rather than just sex.
No, he's a really nice guy, but all he talks about is sex and sex. And it really turns me off.
Well,
I mean, I'm 60 years old.
You know, okay, I think what's turning you off here is the fact that he seems so obsessed with it and he seems to focus on that. Maybe if you have a talk with him and say, I think I want a little more than that. I want sex that's meaningful, not just sex for sex. And, you just keep talking and talking and talking about just that doesn't do it for me.
Well, I've told him that. And what I'm really looking for is companionship, which might lead to sex.
Right, so you need to...
I'm not going to jump into bed with this guy, And he doesn't seem to understand it.
Well, you have to tell him what your limits are, and you tell him, I want to get to know you first. That's me. That's what I want. If he can't respect that, then maybe that's not the guy for you.
Yeah, but he really is a nice guy. I mean, I don't know. I'm in between a rock and a hard place,
so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, he's a nice guy, but he's putting pressure on you. So
yes, definitely.
What do you want to do? You can't have it every way, and you have to be straight with him and say, look, I like you. I think you're a nice guy. I think there might be some potential here, but I'd like you to slow down.
Now, could my bad marriage have contributed to the fact that I'm no longer interested in sex?
Yes.
Or is it because I'm 60 years old?
No, it has nothing to do with being 60. If you enjoyed sex in your youth, you should be able to enjoy sex now. It is not about that. It's probably that you're just turned off all of that because of your lousy marriage. But you know what? Not every man is going to be your ex-husband. I promise you that. So open up yourself a little bit. Do a little bit of self-exploration. Try masturbation, fantasizing, all of that. That will help get your mojo going a little bit. All right, Linda?
Okay,
Have a good night.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, my God. More dating dilemmas after this.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the rules for the first 10 times you have sex with a new lover. How do you make your sex life with a new lover unique? How do you give her experiences that she will remember for years to come? What are the rules for the first 10 times you have sex with a new lover? How do you make up for lack of sexual experience or skilled expertise? How do you make sure she is still thinking of you, even when other guys are hitting on her? Or is she on a date with someone else? This program has those answers and more, including an emotional needs analysis of these sexual experiences you are going to enjoy with your new lover. The rules for the first 10 times you have sex with a new lover. Buy this program now at franktalks.com.
Every month we invite Frank of Frank Talks, Frank Kermit of franktalks.com to talk to us about things related to dating. He's a dating coach, was in his heyday a seduction coach. We can find out what that's all about later when we talk about players in the Cassanova Complex. I think he's a reformed Casanova. We've also been talking about being single and past 50 and negotiating safer sex. 514-790-0991. Hi, Sylvia. Welcome to Passion.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Laurie. It's very nice to talk to you tonight.
Nice to talk to you.
I'm well over 50. Well, I'm 54.
Okay, well, that's not well over.
Well, somewhat. I've got to say I was very, very, very sexually active in my younger years, like late teens, 20s, 30s.
Mm-hmm.
I had a number of bad experiences, and somehow, once I turned 50, when I went through menopause, I lost all interest.
Okay.
I am not interested at all. However, in my dreams, I've got to tell you, I have dreams, very sexual dreams, and I have actually had orgasms in my dreams, in my sleep. Is that possible, or am I?
Sure. It's very possible, and it tells me that there are still sexual interests, desires deep inside of you. You're expressing that, so something is threatening to you. In other words, maybe because of your bad experiences, you somehow feel threatened with the idea of even expressing or having sexual desire.
That makes a lot of sense to me, actually.
But it's definitely there. Your dreams are telling you, Sylvia, you got it, baby. You got it. You still can do it. You know? I mean, again, you may want to work through what some of these bad experiences have been. You may want to start with self-exploration techniques. And
something like that even makes me feel very uncomfortable. I was raped a couple of times.
Okay, well, that would explain a lot then.
I had very terrifying experiences.
Oh, well, that is terrifying.
And that kind of ruined it for me for a long time. But actually, in the past couple of years, even at this age, I mean, I've had dreams of being with younger men, and I wake up and I'm like, what the hell happened?
It's called a wet dream for women.
Yeah.
See, in your dreams, you're back as an adolescent again. Exactly. You're back to your pre-trauma days, when things were good. But you can learn to reclaim your sexuality because it's yours. And you have a right to it, and you can enjoy your body, and you can love your body, and you can love what it does for you on your terms.
Okay, besides self-exploration, is there any help out there? I mean...
Well, seeking therapy would help. I don't know if you have a therapist, but
I don't at this moment, but...
Okay, well, going into therapy would help you a lot to try and overcome some of this and help you regain some of that. Your sexuality.
I would like to be 60 and sexually active.
There's no reason why you can't be, but you do have to. If there's trauma in your life, it does have to be overcome. You have to heal from it. You have to understand it. And be able to move forward from that. But look, people who have been raped, abused, what have you, it's extremely damaging to one's sexual self. There's no question about it.
It's terrifying.
It's horrible.
Every ounce of self-respect
right.
you had in your life.
Right, and sex was used. It was something that was taken from you when it is something that you need to reclaim as your own and that you can share with someone. Very big difference than giving sex to someone or having someone take it from you and actually being able to share with someone.
Exactly. You just go into a little cocoon and you dream and fantasize, but in real life you don't come out.
You know what? Last night I had on a really fantastic author. You may want to just go on the Passion webpage in the author section. It was called Divine Sexuality, and it's the joy of tantric sex. But she was talking really about the Tantra lifestyle, and it really has a wonderful chapter on self-loving in there and self-healing.
Spirituality. Yeah, I heard that.
Go check out the book. I think check out her website, check out the book. I think it would be very healing for you, actually.
Thank you.
All right, Sylvia. Good luck to you. And if you need a referral, email me, and I'll be happy to refer you to somewhere or someone.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
514-790-0991. We're going to let's talk about players, because this is something you know a lot about this. I just want to know, you have been called, I don't think you call yourself this anymore, but you have been called a seduction coach. How does one even become a seduction coach, and what the hell is that?
Okay, well, you start off by being involved in the underground seduction community.
And what is that? Like most people, I didn't even know about that until I met one other person who was, in this community.
It's a community very underground of men who met one another online And then in every city, they hold meetings where these men get together to talk about seduction, the seduction of women. They study products that have been released on the topic of seduction. And that's what I was involved in that for a period of time, when I went from, what I call loser to seducer, from being a man who can't connect with women at all to being a man who was able to date a number of women.
So you got involved in this community and became what? You were coached through, and then you were mentored, and then you mentored? How does it work?
Okay, I got into it having studied a few different products on CD and audio cassette and VHS tapes. And then in talking to other guys, figuring out, look, I tried this. Did you try this? Did it work for you? Well, this worked for me. This didn't work for me. Now, through this process, I met a lot of people. And some of them are people who I wish I hadn't met.
Okay.
People who I invited into my living room to give a talk to a large group of people who now I would rather not associate with. And
why? Is it, in fact, a sleazy kind of thing?
It can be a very sleazy kind of thing. Let me just give you an example. The people who are teaching and mentoring within the seduction community, a number of them don't have an education in psychology. They don't have real
We should tell our listeners you have a master's degree, just so you know.
Yes, and I also have a certificate in trauma counseling.
Right, okay. So we do have, somebody who's intelligent here and educated. Yeah.
One of the people that was brought that I sat in to listen to gave the story of how he once helped a biker get away from the police. And as a reward, the biker brought over a girl to, that he could
reward him with.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, he didn't do anything with her all weekend long. So when the biker came at the end of the weekend to pick her up and said, "So, did you have fun?" He says, "Well, we didn't do anything because she didn't even speak English." And the biker began to beat the woman in front of him.
Oy, oy, oy.
And then she promptly, when she got beaten up, she promptly started to have sex with the man. And he just, took it. And he was 19 or 20 at the time. Now he was in his 40s, and he was teaching this as an example of, yes, see, guys, this is how women respond to male dominance.
Oh, that's horrible.
And when you're on the, when I'm sitting in that audience, I'm listening to this, I'm saying, okay, there's something wrong with this.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something seriously wrong with that, Frank.
And so I'm listening to this. I'm thinking, okay, I don't want to learn from this person anymore. And I separated myself from that. When I got into the seduction community, my first number one goal at the time was get my ex-fiance back. I wanted to get married and have a family.
Right.
Now, I had to go through this journey where I had to experiment with a lot of different relationship structures, trying to figure out what relationship structures work. Trying to date as many women as possible, and it was a lot of fun at times.
Were you a Casanova? Is that something? Did you find you had this Cassanova complex, which we'll talk about in a moment? But
it's very addictive when you're dating up to 5 women at the same time and just managing that schedule. It can be very addictive because you get a lot of status. It really pumps up your ego.
Doesn't sound all that healthy to me, but anyhow.
No, it's not emotionally healthy. It's a very lonely lifestyle. And having gone through it, I can understand why it might be fun for a short period of time, and that's all it is. It's fun. But when it continues on to become an ongoing lifestyle, it's not fun anymore.
Right.
It's escapism. Because you're trying to get away from a core hurt where you just don't really like yourself.
What's interesting is that you left that community because you started looking at the emotional lives of men and women, which is something that players don't do, and which is the seduction community doesn't do. It's more about how do we get the girl.
Yeah.
Give me a trick on how to get the girl. When
what's
in
the
fact,
pickup line?
Yeah, give me the one line that I need for that.
So when a girl says to you she doesn't want to date you because you're dating other people, what do you tell her so that she'll
so she'll want to sleep with you?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that doesn't. That doesn't sit well with me either. You're listening to Dating Dilemmas. Would love to hear some of your stories. Have you ever been with a player, a Casanova, somebody with a Cassanova complex? Would love to hear from you tonight at 514-790-0991. You're listening to Passion on CJAD 800.
From Loser to Seducer is the story of Frank B. Kermit. This book marks the triumph of a nice guy over most of his inner demons. This includes going from being a loser to managing 5 lovers at the same time, his first Valentine's date with 2 women at the same time, and getting back the one that got away. Want to learn how you can change your life? Buy this book at franktalks.com.
Dating dilemmas tonight on Passion. We're talking with Frank Kermit of franktalks.com. We've been talking about the whole seduction community. Frank first started out in the biz of, he was a seduction coach, and then wrote many books, developed theories on emotional needs theories, and about, how the whole seduction thing really doesn't work in that way. You found a whole other way by making men more sensitive to the needs of women, that's the best way to actually seduce women if you want to seduce them. So Frank has written multiple books on this. If you want to know, you can go to his website, franktalks.com, and, check out his library.
Basically, when I got into this, I wasn't looking for one-night stands. I was looking for relationships.
Okay.
So anything that was geared to how to pick up a girl in a club, how to have a one-night stand, and that type of mentality, it's stuff that I personally stayed away from.
Okay.
Because I didn't see how that was going to help me build a long-term successful marriage.
Right.
One of my biggest fears was the fear of getting divorced.
Right.
Getting my heart broken so many times made me realize that if I ever get divorced, it's going to totally traumatize me.
Right.
So I focused on emotional needs. One of my mentors pointed out that, there's an emotional need behind everything a woman says and does. First time I ever heard somebody coin that phrase, and I just began a process of trying to identify what is an emotional need, how do I address it, and what are the effects when you do.
Mm-hmm.
And
so you were testing your own theory
the entire time.
On yourself.
Just years and years of experimentation, trial and error. Okay, here's my theory. There is an emotional need that women need emotional range. And let me test this out. And who does it work on? Who does it not work on? When you're dating 5 women at the same time and you say, here's a story from my own past about my favorite childhood memory. Let me see how telling this same story affects these different women and what evokes in them. And it was just, I documented almost everything. I didn't publish everything.
Did they know that they were being subjects, that they were guinea pigs for your future books?
Well, I was keeping a journal. I never intended for this to be a life business for me. You got to understand, I got into this and I had a different career path. What happened was people were noticing my results, that I was actually getting dates. And I've always been a big guy. I'm not the best looking guy. So when people are looking at me saying, how can you look the way you do, but you got a girlfriend? Or you have 3 girlfriends?
Right.
And, somebody referred me to somebody else, and I would get a new guy coming up to me saying, listen, I'm new at this. Would you sit down? I'll buy you lunch. Can we just talk?
Right.
And one guy turned into 3 guys, turned into groups of guys. I'm starting to coach groups of men. It wasn't something that I had actively planned.
It kind of accidentally fell into your lap, kind of, just by doing your own research for yourself.
Exactly. It chose me.
But it was smart to keep a diary, because, of course, it's like doing a field study.
Exactly. And what happened was I just got so tired of telling the same stories over and over and over. Somebody once asked me, Frank, are you ever going to write this into a book? Because I've showed up to 3 of your little group things here, and it's the same stories, and I love them, but I want to go over the same ones again and again. So I figured, okay, fine, I'll put out 1 book.
So how many do you have now?
11.
11 books.
11.
I can't even get 1 out yet.
That doesn't include the 7 that are on my computer that I have yet to edit.
Oh, my God. franktalks.com if you want to have a look at Frank's library. One of the things that came up in our conversation was people who have this Cassanova complex. Can you define it for me?
Sure. In one line, it's guys who have become addicted to the sexual conquest of multiple women and who end up not being able to have emotionally intimate relationships with women.
Ooh, I'm sure there's plenty of women who have ended up in relationships with guys like that, who they knew they couldn't feel the intimacy and certainly that fear of commitment.
Mm-hmm. Now, in that particular case, with all due respect to those women who experience it, if they continue to date players and if they continue to repeat their own behavior pattern of only dating men who have a fear of intimacy, that's usually a symptom of their own fear of intimacy. Because people who truly want that type of emotional connection when they do hook up with a player, it's a temporary thing.
And they can usually spot them out, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Those women who are emotionally healthy, who have dated the Casanovas, they figure, okay, the Casanova's a temporary fun guy. But what happens when the Casanova actually develops emotions and says, no, I want to be with you because you're emotionally healthy? He doesn't use that terminology.
Right.
But he feels that that girl is different and he wants to be with her and he wants to try to be serious. She doesn't believe him. She says, come on, you're a player, you can't possibly...
Once a player, always a player.
Exactly.
Well, it's difficult to get out of that mindset when you've been doing it a long time. Like, I've met Casanovas or players that are well into their 40s. I've been doing this the whole time, never settled down, never had a relationship longer than a couple of months. Is that the person you want to settle down with? Like, you have to base it on the person's history, too.
You also got to remember that to live that lifestyle successfully requires certain behavior patterns. And once you have those behavior patterns embedded, you're going to take it into your actual competent and emotionally fulfilling relationships. Those behavior patterns will ruin those great relationships.
Right.
So you might be with an amazing person.
You end up sabotaging.
Exactly.
Just for...
From Loser to Seducer is the story of Frank B. Kermit. This book marks the triumph of a nice guy over most of his inner demons. This includes going from being a loser to managing 5 lovers at the same time, his first Valentine's date with 2 women at the same time, and getting back the one that got away. Want to learn how you can change your life? Buy this book at franktalks.com.
You're listening to Dating Dilemmas tonight on Passion. We are talking about players, the people with the Cassanova Complex. Okay, somebody just called in, didn't want to come on the air, but they had a really good question, Frank. How do you spot a player? Every woman wants to know this. And stay away, of course.
I got to tell you that the most smooth players don't allow themselves to be spotted.
Ooh, okay, that's not good. So what do you look for?
Okay, if you want to find someone who loves being known as a player, look at the way they're dressed. They're dressed to get attention. During my player days, I experimented with dressing like a pimp and going out about town.
And you were successful, Frank?
Well, I got
dressed like a pimp?
Yes, because I got lots of attention. I would have people come up to me, especially when I walked to street festivals here in Montreal.
Right.
I would have couples walk up to me, and then the guy would be taking a picture of his girlfriend with me.
Right. So anything that attracts attention, so would it be like a really loud fancy car too?
Loud fancy cars, anything that is designed to get the attention of the girl.
Okay.
And even though the guy might look like a clown. I mean, I dress like a pimp. I'm a big guy dressing like a pimp. I got lots of attention. I looked like a clown, but I got the attention I was looking for.
Okay.
Because women would immediately give me attention. One woman just once grabbed my hat, put it on her own head, and said, "It's my birthday, and I can do what I want." And then went to dance with her friends.
What else? What other things would you look for?
People who are trying to initiate conversations and using something called false time constraints.
What does that mean?
Okay, they come up to a table of people and they say, "Listen, I only have a couple of minutes, but let me get your opinion on something." And then a couple of minutes turns into 20 minutes and 30 minutes, and now they're sitting in with your group. And so you'll turn around and say, "Well, wait a minute. Didn't you say that you had to go meet your friend and you only had a couple of minutes to talk?" Mm-hmm. "Oh, that's okay." That's a sign of a player. They're already starting out with the lies.
They're scoping out. Okay. Mm-hmm.
They're starting out with the lies. One of the questions that players are often taught to ask is, how does everybody know each other? And it seems like a pretty, harmless question. Mm-hmm. They're trying to figure out who is single.
Who's matched, okay.
And who's matched. Because if I I think 3 of these girls are really pretty at this table, but it turns out that these 2 are dating the guys sitting at that table there, but this is the single one.
You're going to focus on that one.
Exactly.
Yeesh. Never knew that tactic. What else?
Well, we're looking at the way that they're communicating. Look at their hand movements. And look at the times that they will point to themselves during telling of a story. So let's say they're telling a story, and I'll give you an example right now. If I start talking about my favorite childhood memory, but I start using sexual innuendo in the story, if I happen to point to myself during specific words of sexual innuendo, I am sub-communicating that you should feel those things towards me.
Mm-hmm. Eesh, it's like subliminal seduction.
Exactly. So it's hitting you on multiple levels.
Okay, that's very difficult. What you're really saying, Frank, it's not so easy to spot.
It's not easy
because they're
to spot.
master manipulators.
Exactly. What you need to look for, and this is to all the women out there, you have to know what your personal boundaries are and stick to them.
Yeah, that's a good plan.
Because if you're looking for signs, you're still putting the attention on the guy, which is exactly what we used.
Mm-hmm.
Put the attention on me and I'll manipulate how you see me. The key here is that I could never seduce a woman who had her own boundaries set. Because regardless of what I presented and offered to her, even if she was tempted, if she had her own boundaries and she had her own rules set about what she would and would not do, there's nothing that a man can do to seduce her away from that.
Okay. So stick with your strong boundaries.
Exactly.
Makes a lot of sense. I hope that answers your question. It certainly illuminates it for us, Frank. Well, thank you very much for joining us this month, and we'll catch up with you again in July. Can't believe it's already this date.
July.
It's so far. It's so short. But anyhow, thank you very much for joining us. I want to thank all of you for listening. If you need to reach Frank, you can. Frank at franktalks.com. If you need to reach me, passion at cjad.com. You can also follow me on Twitter. The Twitter handle is Dr. Laurie Sex Talk. I'd like to thank Matt Ward in Master Control. Thank you very much for keeping us on track. Coming up next, you've got news and then comedy for you. I want to wish you a wonderful rest of the evening, and do remember, life is short, so take the time to smell the flowers and indulge your passions.
From Loser to Seducer is the story of Frank B. Kermit. This book marks the triumph of a nice guy over most of his inner demons. This includes going from being a loser to managing 5 lovers at the same time, his first Valentine's date with 2 women at the same time, and getting back the one that got away. Want to learn how you can change your life? Buy this book at franktalks.com.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the rules for the first 10 times you have sex with a new lover. How do you make your sex life with a new lover unique? How do you give her experiences that she will remember for years to come? What are the rules for the first 10 times you have sex with a new lover? How do you make up for lack of sexual experience or skilled expertise? How do you make sure she is still thinking of you, even when other guys are hitting on her? Or is she on a date with someone else? This program has those answers and more, including an emotional needs analysis of these sexual experiences you are going to enjoy with your new lover. The rules for the first 10 times you have sex with a new lover. Buy this program now at franktalks.com.